Hello, guitar players. Have you ever checked out Schecter guitars? Well, I'm here to tell you that they make some wonderful stuff over there. They're also my sponsors for this season, and I couldn't be happier. Rather than reading a bunch of ad copy and doing that traditionalized sort of commercial for them, they were doing things a little bit different. They sent me a guitar. They sent me their Solo 2 Custom. I am traditionally a single cutaway guitar player, and the Solo 2 Custom is Schecter's version of that, and it comes fully loaded, fully stocked, ready to play tonight at any gig. It has Tone Pros hardware, it has their Schecter locking tuners, it has their Schecter USA Pasadena Plus pickups. This thing's just amazing. For the price point, you would have a hard time beating the quality of this guitar. So go out and find yourself a Schecter guitar. Look them up at schecterguitars.com. You will be happy that you did. Hey guys, this is Zach from the Anti-Heroes podcast, and I want to welcome our newest sponsor to the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Can you believe that? Anti-Heroes listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/antiheroes. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/antiheroes. Thank you so much, and support all the folks at DistroKid because they're doing amazing work, and we couldn't be happier to have them on board. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors over at Jim Dunlop and MXR Pedals. We couldn't be luckier to have these guys on board with us. I personally use these products, and you should too. Find out more about them at jimdunlop.com. Let's get on to the podcast. Hello and welcome to the Anti-Heroes podcast with your host, Zach Blair. I am Zach Blair. How you guys doing? Thank you so much for tuning in. Today my guest is Josh Caterer from the Smoking Popes. And man, I cannot say enough about the Smoking Popes. And the Smoking Popes came around at a time, they came around, pretty much when my band Hackfish started in the 90s. But I think I got sort of introduced to them at a time where I was sort of crestfallen with what was considered punk rock, the umbrella of punk rock. In the 90s, everything was sounding exactly the same. Everything, And without naming names, it just became very sameness, very homogenized. This thing that was called punk rock that I always loved so much. When the bands that I'd grown up with all really sounded different. X didn't sound like Minor Threat. Minor Threat didn't sound like Black Flag. Black Flag didn't sound like, Richard Hell and the Voidoids. That was all punk rock. It was all considered punk rock. But none of it sounded the same. So punk rock meant expressing yourself, your inner voice, your truest self, your truest voice, and however you wanted to sound. You didn't have to belong to something. You didn't have to be fast. You didn't have to do X, Y, and Z to qualify as a punk rock song, which I believe ended up happening in the 90s. As a music fan and as somebody that was trying to create my own art, or our own art in the band I was in, we were sort of kind of looking around like, are we on crazy pills here? What's going on? How is this becoming, punk rock? Well, and then we got introduced to the Smoking Popes, and no one sounded like the Smoking Popes. A, their songs are just better than everyone's, and B, they had my guest today singing for him, Josh Caterer. Josh sort of says it himself. I didn't want to pigeonhole Josh or whatever, but it is sort of a crooning thing. It is sort of like a big band orchestra singer. I can't explain it any other way. I know that Morrissey, they ended up being his favorite band, and he took them out on tour. I think because there was a similar vocal style happening, but I don't know if that was on Josh's end. I think Josh was just being Josh, and Morrissey just liked it like everybody else, was a huge fan. But man, we were just blown away, and so we just listened to him constantly in the van, and then when we had the opportunity, we very much introduced ourselves to him and became good buddies. We had a lot of history with him, and Josh and I get to talk about some of that. Some crazy history, actually, some really interesting stories, and to the point of where we even played together with the Rise Against band that I'm in right now. just a few years back at a Chicago Metro show, which, like I say in this episode, it couldn't have been more Chicago, seeing the Smoking Popes at the legendary Metro there in Chicago. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you listen to my interview with Josh Caterer.
I know that you love me. Oh, I know you love me. Oh, I know you love me.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, Zach, how are you?
How you doing, buddy? We're just going to keep catching up. For those uninitiated, I've known my guest today for a very, very long time. Our paths have intersected throughout our careers. More definitively, my band in the 90s was called Hagfish. We were huge, huge fans of the Smoking Popes. And we always wanted to make a tour work, but it never worked out. But man, you guys' stuff was just ubiquitous in our van. That's all we listened to.
Oh, well, the feeling was mutual. I remember, we were big fans of what you were doing and have felt that way throughout the different projects you've been involved in over the years. And it's cool how, even though we have always talked about, let's tour together, and it's never happened, but our paths always seem to cross. And I remember, meeting up with you. I can't remember what year it was, but we were in New York, and you, came to some deli and met with us.
Yeah.
It was a weird kind of throwback for us to those Chicago suburb days. And I feel like our friendship has always served as an occasional re-anchoring to some of those cool memories of starting out and being young punks.
I think so, too.
You know?
I think so, too. Well, and for us, it was even back then, we were always getting a little fed up with, what was getting called punk rock and this whole umbrella. And everything was so sort of similar. And you guys, and I know you've heard this a lot, and I want to talk about your guitar playing today, but you have one of the more unique voices in not just punk rock, but singing voices, because Josh, my guest today, is the guitar player as well as the lead singer for the band Smoking Popes. But your voice is so discernibly you and so original, and not just punk, but in rock and roll music. And for anyone that hasn't heard what I'm talking about, stop this now and listen to what I'm talking about. But my God, it was one of those bands where, again, it's the true sign of a great artist, of a great band that has something signature where you could hear 1,000 different, at the time, the punk thing that we were doing in the 90s, and people go, oh, that's the Smoking Popes, the second you open your mouth. And I just always admired that. I thought it was amazing.
Well, thanks.
Of course.
I think our thing has always been kind of drawing influences from stuff that isn't punk and bringing it into the punk genre, and having grown up watching a lot of old musicals and old Frank Sinatra movies and other kinds of things, and bringing that kind of crooner / show tune vibe into the songwriting and singing. But you put that in a punk song, and I don't know, something seemed to work. I think that being melodic in that way is more common now, and I don't think that's just because everyone is influenced by the Smoking Popes. I wouldn't presume to say that, but I think that more young people are kind of grabbing onto different genres like that and blending things together.
Sure.
For example, one thing that I've seen that wasn't as prevalent back when we were getting started is the way that punk and metal have kind of blended together. I feel like back then, you were either a punk or you were a metaler.
Right.
But those things have kind of, there isn't that separation. And also there isn't as much separation between that and kind of more operatic sounding melodic stuff. Everything's kind of this kaleidoscope of influences. It's kind of cool.
No, it is cool. And, growing up in the Midwest, you guys in Chicago, I was in we were in Texas, you didn't have the benefit or the ability to be aligned to some coast. So for me, it was if it was aggressive or counterculture or pissed people off, I got into it, whether it was punk or metal or whatever. I didn't have the luxury of going, well, I'm a part of this sound or this scene, and that's where I'm going to align myself. And so I do feel like you're right. It's with the internet now, just everybody is on the same sort of playing field, and you get into everything. You're not just sort of indoctrinated into one thing, But I think that also says something to you guys. It speaks to why you were so original. You were just picking influences from everywhere and kind of making that what the Smoking Popes ended up being.
I guess we were, in ways that I think aspects of what we were doing kind of were maybe a little irritating to people who really liked punk music, but specifically our guitar solos, because it's a little better now, but back in the day, if you were punk, you just weren't playing guitar solos.
Right.
There was a period of time where our audience was just sort of like politely enduring the guitar solos
Right.
that we were playing. And our guitar thing has always been fairly influenced by Thin Lizzy, because that's one of the first bands that we liked when we were kids.
Yeah.
I need to point out that like our guitar stuff is very dependent on my brother Eli's contribution.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That we kind of like play off of each other, and not only with like guitar harmonies, but he also is like way better at using pedals than I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have like 2 pedals on my board because that's all my brain can deal with. But
Right.
he actually knows how to do like very atmospheric, textured things with pedals and different tones and stuff. He's really great at that, and I think that has helped define our sound. So.
And that's another thing, the reason we had such an affinity for you guys, because in Hagfish, my brother was the bassist. And so we always had this like common bond with other brothers. And in Smoking Popes, the whole front line are brothers. So your brother Eli plays guitar and your other brother plays bass. And, you know, we just love that, my brother and I. Like, holy shit, they're doing one greater, you know. You know, we love your band.
You know that like when you grow up like learning to play an instrument along with a sibling, you develop like a kind of musical shorthand.
Absolutely.
Where you just we're all kind of like, you were listening to the same stuff, you were influenced by the same stuff, and you were learning together. So now you have a kind of synchronicity in your playing that you don't have to talk about. It's just there, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you feel that, right?
Absolutely. And I've heard the phrase blood harmony, you know, usually to do with like vocals like the Everly Brothers, but I think it works with all instruments. The way you phrase, it's your brother. It's just, you know, you developed your style and taste together. So it just happens, you know.
Totally.
Yeah. Our singer in Hagfish named his son after your brother. His son's name is Eli. And, yeah. So we already talked about this, but at one point, I believe in 1997, maybe 98, my band was working on our second record. You guys were working on your record. Was it Destination Failure? What was your record?
Yeah.
Destination
Failure.
And
we were staying in the same place, right?
Same apartment complex. The Wu-Tang Clan was staying above us. I just remember that. I remember they did not like us, and I don't blame them. We were right below them. I remember them like flicking cigarette butts at us from their balcony. And I don't blame them for that.
I remember this being a source of tension because I think we came over and visited your place at least once.
Yeah.
And we felt a little tension, like there was some animosity coming in our direction from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah, which, you know, why not? I mean, it's like a badge of honor now. But our singer's wife was pregnant, and because we were hanging out with you guys, George was just like, I'm going to name my son Eli. I think that's a great name. So
does Eli know? Does my brother know that?
He does. I've told him a few times, and I just reminded him the last time. I think he might be sick of me telling him that story, to be honest with you. But a real history. It's a real history, man.
Yeah.
So starting out, you know, you said Thin Lizzy. So were those like your guys? Who were your heroes? Who were your guys?
Guitar-wise, it was Thin Lizzy. It was Angus Young. It was Ace Frehley.
Yeah.
Those were kind of the big ones. I mean, I'm also a big fan of like Jimmy Page and B.B. King and Johnny Winter and people like that. But I think the ones that are most applicable to our playing would be Thin Lizzy, and then the AC/DC and Kiss influences.
Yeah.
But also, I have to mention Elliot Easton from the Cars, because there's an aspect of his playing that I think about a lot. And the thing about him that I sort of took as a framework for thinking about guitar solos, at least in the studio, is the way that he would take a small section of a song. He's got like 8 bars or whatever, and he crafts a solo that is unique to the feel of that song, and it has like an arc to it with a climactic conclusion, and it feels like he wasn't just always using the same patterns that he always plays in. Like
Right.
even some guitar players that I love, like Angus Young, for example. I mean, Angus Young is a genius, but like a lot of his solos kind of feel the same. Like he's kind of
Sure.
like operating in the same neighborhood. He's not like reinventing himself with every guitar solo the
Right.
way that Elliot Easton did. You listen to even just on their first album, like the solo from My Best Friend's Girl and the solo from Just What I Needed.
Yeah.
They kind of sound like two different guitar players
Yeah. Yeah.
because he like recognized that those songs have two different vibes. So he like wrote something that was tailored to that. And I've always kind of thought about that and tried to bring something of that into our guitar solos on our records.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because, in your guitar solos, there's always a theme happening. There's always maybe a counter melody, like it could have been an alternate vocal melody. You being a singer, I'm sure that does take into play. And then you'll show a little lick here or there, and then it might end with the melody. And that's very much Elliot Easton. So that makes a whole lot of sense. It's funny. I've been going down a deep Zach Wilde rabbit hole because I'm a dork and I do stuff like that. And in one of his solos that I liked, it was an Elliot Easton lick. And he was like, I got this from Elliot Easton. And he praised Elliot Easton. And I was like, God damn it. I don't think Elliot Easton gets enough praise. He really doesn't.
Well, no, because his guitar solos are like shorter and they're crafted to the song. You don't think of the Cars as that's a guitar band.
Right.
The guitar work all fits into the larger tapestry of what they're doing. I think most people would think of them more as a keyboard band.
I think you're right.
I think that speaks to his genius as well because he's not trying to be flashy. He's like trying to serve the song, which is
Absolutely.
a really important principle.
Well, and it's like a guitar solo or a part sticking out in a Beatles song. You're playing the world's greatest songs. Cars were, Jesus Christ, those are some of the greatest songs ever written. So people weren't so much paying attention to the guitar solo; they were just singing along to that amazing chorus.
Right.
But yeah.
Exactly.
And so again, coming up with your brother, who was your co-guitar player. Did you guys share the same sort of influences, or was he into things you weren't into, and vice versa?
Yeah, we were all listening to the same stuff because I would buy a record and bring it home and we would all listen to it. My older brother Matt would buy a record and listen to it. So we had a shared library, and Matt was really doing some reconnaissance work, and he would go out there and find like more obscure punk stuff and bring it home and be like, guys, you got to check this out.
Right.
Like one time he came home and somehow he had gotten from, because he's a little older, so he was in high school when I was in middle school. And he came home one day with a cassette that he had gotten from somebody at school, and he was like, listen to this. And he puts it in, and it was this band called the Fearless Iranians from Hell. Do you remember
I
this
remember
band?
that band. I absolutely remember that band. Yeah.
And the stuff was just crazy and angry, and it was that great kind of punk which is like ridiculous and awesome at the same time.
Yeah. 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 I remember that feeling with MDC when I first heard MDC. I was just like, what the fuck is going on here?
My family's just a little weird. I remember we had that also on cassette, and we just listened to it over and over.
That's fucking great. When did Smoking Popes happen? When was the start date of Smoking Popes?
1991. During that summer, just my brothers and I had been a band called Speed Stick.
Oh, right.
And we had played a couple shows. But then in the summer of 91, we decided to change our name to Smoking Popes. And we got a different drummer. My brother Matt had been playing drums. I think Eli originally was playing bass, and I was guitar and vocals because I was the only one of us who could sing and play at the same time.
Wow.
So that qualified me for that spot as the singer.
Right.
But then during that summer, our parents said, because he's 3 years younger than me, so he was like, he might have been a freshman when this happened, but our parents were like, Eli, you can't be in a band. You're too young.
Right.
So, you can come back to that later. Like when you're a senior or something, you can start doing that again. So he had to step out. And so we got a different drummer and became the Smoking Popes. And Eli eventually rejoined on second guitar. But
Okay.
that sort of like fact that we could rotate spots like that all
Right.
kind of indicated that not only were we all listening to the same stuff, but we had this setup in the basement where we had a drum kit, and then we had a bass with a bass amp and a guitar and a vocal thing, and we would just all kind of like rotate to different
Oh, that's
positions. Like
awesome.
we would just jam for a while, and then we would get up and all rotate clockwise one spot. So we can all play all that stuff,
That's awesome.
which was great. But I think that was also part of this shared DNA and this shared kind of understanding of how bands work and how the instruments are supposed to kind of interact with each other.
Sure. Well, and I think that makes also a lot of sense because you guys weren't just some punk band in the 90s. There was a lot of us back then, and there was always something different about your band. It always sounded great. You were always like record tight. And of course, being a guy in a band with my brother, I knew where it came from. But you're right. If you're also a guy that can play drums and bass and guitar, and your brother can, and your other brother can, well, if you're palm muting on a verse riff or something like that, you know how that guy plays hi-hats. You know what I mean? You know, you know how they phrase on every instrument. So it's this sort of carnal knowledge that you're just going to line up together very well. With like, let's say the metal world, a lot of like Kerry King, I heard Kerry King plays all the rhythm guitars and even the bass.
Mm-hmm.
Metallica records, James Hetfield plays all of the rhythm guitar. Well, with your band, it's like you guys all play the exact same way, so there's no need for that. And again, I
Right.
think it's just intrinsic to being brothers.
Right. And again, I would say there's like surprisingly little conversation about this when we are arranging songs and taking new material into the studio. All I do is like
Sure.
if I've written a song, I'll come and I'll play it on guitar for the guys, and they just listen to it, and then they start playing along with me, and they all just kind of like it just comes together. There's no point at which I'm saying to anybody like, no, don't do that.
Hmm.
Like play this instead.
Yeah.
It's just all we're all just kind of hearing the same idealized version of the song in our heads and striving towards it with the same set of musical principles as our grid.
All right. Well, it all adds up to just a great band, man. Always a great band. Speaking of which,
Thanks.
you betcha, Bucky. You guys are back. I mean, I don't think you've ever broke up. You've just taken hiatuses and things like that along the way, correct?
We did kind of break up for about 7 years there, from
Okay.
like 98 to 2005.
Okay.
I dropped out of music for some of those years because of some personal upheaval and spiritual epiphany and things like that, and I
Right.
needed to back off of music and just focus on getting my own stuff together, and eventually came back with this other band called Duval for a couple of years, and then in
Um,
2005. But we were broken up there for a while.
I remember Duval. Duval was great. I love Duval.
Well, thank you. I just was talking to somebody about, who was it? Was asking me. I get asked about this a lot. Is Duval going to do anything? Like, you guys should do some reunion shows, or I think it might have been my brother Eli was suggesting, like, we should maybe put that album out on vinyl at some point because it's never been on
Yeah.
vinyl. That would be good, but that would involve maybe a couple of shows. Of
Sure.
course, then we'd want to see if like Rob Kellenberger would play drums on the reunion
Mm-hmm.
show, which I haven't talked to him in a little while, but I think he's retired from music,
Oh, okay. Okay.
at least for the time being.
Yeah. I remember seeing you guys just a few years back with Jawbreaker at the Aragon. I was in town. We were doing something with Rise Against, and I got chills immediately. And it just so took me back because, of course, Falumli's back with you guys, and
Yes.
So, the original, I'm supposing the original, but at least the lineup that was on those records. And
Yeah.
I knew you had just the lovely and amazing Neil Hennessy played drums for quite a while, who's also been like the fifth member of Rise Against. He's played rhythm guitar for us. He played bass for us in Australia last year because our bassist had a family emergency. But Falumli being back and just taking me back to when we discovered you guys back then, it was just, man, you still sound exactly the fucking same. You haven't lost a note. It's just perfect. It's amazing, man.
Neil is a great guy
Such a
and
great
an
guy.
amazing musician.
He really
And
is.
yeah, this was it's kind of incredible thing because like Neil is a fantastically talented drummer, and I think what he was bringing to the table was just like top notch.
Yeah.
But then when the transition was made to have Mike come back in, there's something about Mike's unique style that made us feel more like the actual Smoking Popes than we had
Sure.
in a
Sure.
long time.
That makes sense.
Because Mike, and maybe part of it is that Mike is left-handed, and so he plays
Open hand.
open.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
plays open. So when you watch him play, he just kind of like with left-handed guitar players, like just there's like a different kind of neurological thing that they're applying to their
Mm-hmm.
craft. And with Mike, because he's not doing crosshand, it's like open hand, so he can get that snare
Yeah.
stick way up, you know. So he gets his
Yeah.
full arm into it, like every time he's hitting the snare,
Yeah. I
which
love
is
those. I
part
love the
of.
guys that play like that. Yeah. Mike Borden from Faith No More was like, played open hand. Sammy Siegler, who's been Youth of Today and Judge, and he's played with every hardcore band there is, and Rival Schools. What an amazing drummer! But also open hand. There is something different about that phrasing. And so if Mike being one of those guys and played on those records, it's like, well, yeah. And there's just something about the DNA of a band, any band. It could be nuanced, but it's just the way that guy threw it, whatever it might have been. And this other guy's playing the part exact, but there's just some little detailed minutia that's a little bit different, And that's
Mhm.
that's the stuff I love about it all. That little magic, element. I love that. I love it.
Right.
About all of this.
That's kind of the cool thing about being into bands. Like, you can appreciate the individual playing of, certain brilliant people. But like, there's something about, I love this band because the sum is greater than the parts. When you put those guys together, what they create has like a personality of its own. Like, and I
Absolutely.
feel like there's so many examples of that, but always like one of the first ones that jumps to my mind is Fugazi. I guess you could say that particularly the rhythm section of that band like are individually like virtuosos on their instruments. But you put them
Yeah.
together and there's the four of them when they're all playing together, they're like this organism that has its own collective voice that is just like
Absolutely.
it's a powerful thing.
It is. It is. It becomes a singular unit. And I imagine on a
Yeah.
different level, you're saying that even now when you're playing, road gigs, you don't have your brothers. So I imagine it's you and Falumli and then two other guys. So it must, on that level as well, it probably sounds great, I'm imagining, but it's your brothers. I bet there's differences.
It is different. I mean, it feels
Yeah.
different. And
Yeah.
it's great. I'm very aware of that. I was, when we're out on the road and it's different players, I'm like, this feels good, and I want to appreciate it for what it is because I do think there's a chemistry here, but it's not the same chemistry. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know, and it's tied by certain things. We're playing the same songs with a couple of the key players, but like once you swap somebody out of a band, like it's not exactly the same. But like, and we had some hesitation about even if it can't be the four of us original guys, like should we even be touring or should we just limit it
Right.
to only playing locally because that's all we can do? And it was like, well, it depends on how much we want to do this. Like, are
Right.
we okay with just playing 5 shows a year? We kind of decided no. We'd rather
Right.
put together the best version of this that we can and get out there and play more just because there's a burning, insatiable desire within to do that. Like, that's just kind of what we have to do. But like, I've also noticed that there are more and more bands out there. Like, sort of the longer you're a band, the more likely it is that you're swapping out some members on the road. I mean, there's bands out there touring where they only have like one original member or two. We did some reunion shows with the Replacements a few years back, and it was Paul and Tommy.
Yeah, and two
other guys. And it was like, I don't think anybody in the audience was like, this isn't really the Replacements.
Right. Nah.
This is the version of the Replacements that we got, you know.
This is what we got. And that drummer was Josh Free, so it, I'm sure it sounds great.
You can't complain about that.
And you can't complain. But you're right. It's like, look, it's either this or nothing, Cheap Trick, for instance. I know Bunny Carlos retired from the road, and they got Rick Nielsen's son to play drums, and Bunny Carlos made money off the band, and I think they even still paid him from touring and everything. It's just the guy wasn't touring anymore. It just happens. It's like, you're right. If you're going to have longevity as a band, I mean, name a band nowadays that's out working where all the original members are in it. There's not that many, There's really not that many.
There's not that many.
I mean, Rise Against has been together 25 years. I'm not the original guitar player. The other three guys are original, but I'm not. You know what I mean? So it's just, what are you going to do, So speaking of which, what do you guys have coming up? Is there any touring happening soon? Is there any records coming out? What's going on?
Yes to both of those things. We've got a record. We were shooting for a March release date, but it looks like it's going to be April when that comes out. But it's a new studio album called Lovely Stuff. And we've got tours. We're touring in March and April and May. We're doing a co-headlining tour with Off With Their Heads. Then in June, we're going out supporting Bayside for like almost the whole month of June. It feels to us like we're being very active. We're still not doing like 250 shows a year like some bands are doing. But since we spent a lot of years doing about maybe like 20 to 30 shows a year tops.
Sure.
And so now to be doing like 75 to 100 shows feels like we're just like road warriors,
Yeah, but that's great. It's great. And if those tours come through, anyone listening to this, it comes to your town, you better go because you will not be disappointed. You guys just released a single with Scott Lucas from Local H, the Chicago legend. And man, I would love to have Scott on here because his setup and his guitar bass thing is just amazing to me. How did that all come about?
That came about because I wrote this song right after the election. I wrote it like 2 days after the election. And we were already done with the album. So the album's in the can. This is a song that just sort of popped out because of my kind of disgust and frustration and disappointment about the way that the election went. I don't know how political you want to get on this show, but like, let's say
go for it.
I had some feelings about the election that I put into a song, and I just felt like we should put this out there, and the song would have maybe a little more power or some more teeth or something if we were partnering with somebody who was helping us to communicate this message. And Scott was pretty much the first person I thought of because he has a great voice. He has a kind of a tough, edgy energy to his voice, but also just as a persona, he just has this kind of unflinching strength. And I just thought it would be great if he was willing to lock arms with us and do this. And I texted him the song, like a kind of a demo of the song. Was like, do you want to maybe sing a verse? And he got back to me 2.5 minutes later after listening to the demo and said, yes, exclamation point. Like he had no hesitation about it at all and just came in and it was really cool because I've known Scott for, man, we've been not only known him, but touring with him for 20 some years. Like we toured with Local H. Plus, he was part of Triple Fast Action back in the day. We toured together.
No, wait, I didn't know that because Hackfish toured with Triple Fast Action as well. I did not know that Scott was in Triple Fast. I had no idea.
I don't know if he was a permanent member of Triple Fast, but we did a tour with them where he was playing guitar in Triple Fast. We did a whole tour together. So we've known Scott for a long time, but I've never worked with him in the studio before. And it was really cool to see that happen because we recorded his vocal part at Million Yen Studio with Andy Gerber engineering the session. And those guys have worked together a lot. Andy Gerber has engineered like multiple Local H records.
Right.
And so there was a cool, like, sort of working, shorthand that they had, just a rapport that they had in the studio that was very, like, comfortable. And that was cool to see. That all happened very quickly. Like, the song was written quickly 2 days after the election. Then we, like, recorded it pretty quickly. And we wanted to get it out there, like, before the inauguration to kind of have the whole thing be of the moment. Like, this is an expression of feeling about what's happening right now, and also just as a way of saying, like, whatever horrors are going to unfold over the next few years, we want to start by saying, before any of that actually happens, we're against it. Like, we're like pre against it, based on what we already know about this person and his political associates.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And it's so commendable that you spoke and you used your voice and your platform immediately and effectively. And that's all we have. That's all guys like you and me have is our art and our music, and to say something about it, because I'm horrified, disgusted, and appalled.
It's like you can feel hopeless. Like, what can I do? Like, he's been elected. These people have power. So what can you do? And I all I knew is, like, well, one thing I can do is write a song and put it out there. For what that's worth, if everybody within their own sphere offers up whatever kind of resistance they can, that could have a cumulative effect.
Yeah. Well, I talked to Scott Lucas about doing this very podcast. We just haven't made it work yet. I ran into him in Wicker Park, actually, just walking around. And I love Scott, and if hopefully he's listening, and he'll come on. Him and my brother have toured a lot together with Toadies and Local H. And man, just what an artist! What a unique voice. So gear-wise, what are you using nowadays? What's your stuff?
These days, I have a few guitars. I have a Strat it's like called a Fat Strat. It's got humbuckers in it, and that's for recording. I pretty much only use that for recording. These days, though, live, I'm favoring this Fender Coronado guitar.
Oh, cool. That
I have. I think it looks really cool, but I like the way it plays. It's heavier than the Strat, and something about the neck, it feels a little, like, more solid. It's like the neck is, like, a little thicker, and this guitar stays in tune so great. Like, you can wail on
That's
it
great.
For a full set, and you hardly ever have to tune it up. So, like, functionally, I like that for a show, and I'm playing that through a Fender Hot Rod DeVille.
Great amp. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've loved that amp for years. And I'm playing that amp is on the clean channel, and then for distortion, I was using a Boxer Rock for a long time, but I just recently switched over to something called an Angry Driver.
Yeah, okay.
And so I have the Boss. You can get, like, it's like two distortion pedals in one that you can switch from one to the other with different output levels. And so I have the Boss set kind of like halfway as my basic distortion, and then the J&S, the other distortion one, is like cranked up hotter for leads.
Right.
And that's mostly what I'm doing as far as anything. I can't get more complicated than that in a live setting, because I'm trying to think about singing and projecting most of my energy out front, and I can't be, like, focusing on my feet like that.
Right. Well, it's all you need, man. It's all you need. Hey, man, those Hot Rod DeVille amps, I've talked about those a few times. They do break up really well. The lead channel or the red channel on them, they kind of have almost a Marshall property in places. It's great.
They do, but the thing about Marshall amps that I have found frustrating, and this was kind of the reason why I switched at some point and stopped using Marshall, was because on a Marshall, if you've got it cranked up and distorted, it's hard to boost your leads
Yeah,
because the
that's
signal
true.
is already kind of maxed out. So I found that whatever like lead boost pedals I would try to use, I couldn't get my solos to actually cut through any louder.
Yeah.
You can do that on a Fender amp.
Yeah, you can. Well, especially if you have a different channel that you have an independent volume on the channel, you can really, goose the volume.
Mm-hmm.
So also I ask everybody, do you have one that got away? Do you have a guitar, an amp, a pedal, a piece of gear, anything that you had to hawk or got stolen on tour or you just lost that you lament, that you wish you still had?
I used to have an orange amp.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what kind it was, but I had it sort of right at the end of the first phase of the Popes, right before like I quit for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I had this orange that really sounded beautiful, but then I wasn't playing in a band, and for a moment there, I wasn't planning on getting back into a band at any point. So I
Wow.
sold some of my gear and I sold that orange.
Wow.
And when I came back into it, ended up getting this DeVille that I love, and it's not that I'm unhappy with my Fender DeVille. It's just like sometimes I think about that orange.
Yeah.
I wonder where it is now, and I hope it has a good life.
Yeah. Maybe somebody's listening to this and they have it and they'll hit you up and go, hey, you want it back? And they'll
Maybe,
just give it to you.
maybe
Yeah.
that'd be
You
perfect.
never know. You never know. Well, man, Josh, I've taken up enough of your time, man, and I so appreciate you doing this. And again, I've known you for so long. I'm so happy you guys are still doing what you guys do because no one else does what you guys do. No one sounds like the Smoking Popes. No one
Well,
sounds like you.
I appreciate that. You've showered me with many kind words during this interview, and I appreciate all of them. And I'm
It's the
glad that
truth.
we could still connect every once in a while. And it was so fun playing with you guys at Metro. Was that last summer, or was it?
It was 2023 actually. Yeah, it was
Okay, so it
2023.
was like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. God damn, that was so much fun. We just did like deep
That was
cuts and
so
stuff. Yeah, it was amazing.
I remember that being pretty special. There was a great energy to
Yeah.
that show.
Well, just seeing you guys at the Metro, there's like it could have been none more Chicago. Do you know what I mean? And it just reminded me why you guys have always been just one of my faves, and the world needs the Smoking Popes. That's the pull quote from this episode. But man,
Hashtag.
yeah, hashtag. I'll talk to you soon, Josh. Thank you so much again for doing this.
Thank you, Zach. Take care.
Man, I'm so glad I got to see that guy. I'm so glad I got to catch up with him and talk to him. I don't get to see those guys enough. I'm so glad they're back touring. And like we said, yeah, and when he's playing some road gigs, he's not able to do it always with his brothers. But at least there's a Smoking Popes out there. I'll take whatever Smoking Popes there is. What a great band. What an important band. And again, for me, they sort of reinvigorated my love for this thing called punk rock at a time where I was sort of losing hope that a punk band could still be original, could still sort of make music and make art based on the tenets of what I thought punk rock was, which was expressing yourself however you felt like and not trying to sound like someone else. They just came out with a unique voice that was entirely theirs. No one sounds like this band. I'll say it again. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to leave you with a great example of Josh's great guitar playing. And this is going to be the song "I Know You Love Me." Well, I picked the song because it gives me chills to this day. I listened to it before doing this episode, and Jesus Christ, it takes me back. But even if this is your first time you're going to hear this song, it's just so wonderfully written, and his voice is it's heartbreaking. You don't even know what he's singing about. It's just Josh's voice is heartbreaking when he opens his mouth. It's just perfect. It's just perfect. Also, the riffing in it is awesome. This cool minor thing happens under it. The melodies in the chorus, his approach to lead playing, just everything. Just listen to Josh and Eli and Matt and Mike Falumley. Just listen to the Smoking Popes. But you start with this song, "I Know You Love Me." It's off the Destination Failure record, which, as you heard, we were hanging out. We were living across the hall or in the same apartment complex from each other, making our records in Los Angeles. So again, very near and dear to my heart. This whole season is just so many friends and family. Anyway, I hope you liked that one. I sure did. I'm going to thank the folks at Jim Dunlop and MXR Pedals here at the end. Find out what they're doing at jimdunlop.com. I'm also going to thank the folks at DistroKid for helping the artist, the musician, get their music on streaming platforms and cutting out the middleman. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
This world is freezing cold. I long for you to hold me in your arms. This world is burning.